all the world will fly in a flurry when I take you out in the Surrey, when I take you out in the Surrey with the fringe on top.
My mother, called Bunny by everyone, was born in 1909 in Boston and quickly became her father's pet. She went to local public schools and then entered the Boston Museum School of Fine Arts to learn life drawing. In the many years that followed, Mother rendered hundreds of sketches and finished drawings of flowers, bushes, trees, and other botanical specimens. She also did many landscapes and houses, working with a wide variety of media: oils, watercolors, charcoal, and pencil. And I think she liked the pencil the best. In 1965, whilst living in Nevada, she was invited by the chief of the Oahe Indian tribe to paint the Indians. And for a decade, Mother maintained a close connection with the Oahe Indians, painting their elders. And in exchange, they gave her Indian handicrafts. While at the museum school, she met a fellow painter, Julius Katsev, who became a well-known portrait painter of university presidents and educators. During those early years, Katsev experimented in many techniques, including monotypes, which is paint on glass with only one printing, and palette knife oil compositions. Because of Mother's relationship with Katsev, we have a number of his works which are now valuable. He was to do Mother's portrait, which is hanging in our living room. Sometimes I think the portrait looks a bit severe, but Mother could look that way as well. Before she was married, Mother enjoyed the flapper world of 1926 to 1928. And we have many pictures of her in the flapper dress, flowing gowns and beads and hats. And Mother could really do the Charleston, which was the dance of the period. Mother was very energetic, a good horseman, and she could also control a team for a sled or a carriage. In the early years of living on Long Island, 1934 to 44, she would frequently hire a sled or a carriage and drive 5 miles to the Manhasset Railroad station to pick up my father, who was commuting to New York City. Mother was also an early proponent of women driving motor cars, and she delighted in handling my grandfather's huge 1930 Packard sedan. She married my father in Boston in 1929, and I was born on December 20th, 1929. Here is the little family living at 444 52nd Street in New York City in 1932. Later, the family moved to Roslyn, Long Island, and rented a house. In the summer, the family used to drive to West Newton, Mass. for a visit with the grandparents, and then on to Vermont, where their favorite town was Peacham. En route, they always stopped by Harvey's Pond and the small towns of Barnet and West Barnet. There was a favorite overnight place called Long Trail Lodge, with cabins on the Appalachian Trail, which is frequently called the Long Trail. There were wonderful walks, gardens, and vistas. This was truly the family vacation from the economic grind of the 30s. Mother, who I called Bean as a child, and I had a loving relationship. As an only child, I was closer to her than children in large families. Here is a sample of my messages to Mother. During the war years, 1941 to 1945, Mother contributed to the war effort and looked after me when I was not in boarding school. She became a driver for the AWVS, which is the American Women voluntary services, and also a daily airplane spotter. In the early days of the war, the authorities felt that it was necessary to track all aeroplanes, fearing a bombing raid. Although the Axis powers had little strength in the Atlantic, they still set up spotter stations on the roofs of high schools. The spotters were required, using binoculars, to identify the plane, its course, and to report all flights. I used to accompany Mother on her daily shift, and she proudly wore the distinguishing armband given to spotters. I don't know too much about their early years, except they used to enjoy speakeasies, cellars where liquor was served during Prohibition. And I think they enjoyed city living, dances, and parties. And vaudeville, where Will Mahoney, a friend of the family, starred. However, Mother was always a handful, and it resulted in a stormy marriage which ended in divorce in 1944. In order to obtain a divorce, Mother had to become a resident of Nevada, one of the few states which granted divorces. And it took about 120 days to become a resident. We went to a horse ranch in Elko, Nevada, for the cure, where I practiced roping, riding, and a Western revolver draw. In 1947, Mother bought a house in Cambridge, Massachusetts, near Harvard, and I entered Harvard University as a freshman member of the class of 1951. Her time in Cambridge was fun. Mother dated, went to football games, but the only date that seemed to interest her was a cowboy turned construction worker cat skinner back in Elko. In 1950, she sold the house in Cambridge and moved west to marry Ralph Gibbs. They bought a lovely house in the town of Elko. Ralph worked as a foreman on construction and later for the U.S. Forest Service. In the beginning, their marriage worked well. Mother and Ralph had a secret cabin in a wooded mountain ravine beside a rushing stream where they used to hang out. Later, Mother became a chronicler of the Old West and published stories and drawings in Sunset magazine. She wrote about Calamity Jane, the old Chisholm Trail, and the Comstock Lode. Mother researched these people and events and published them in Sunset. However, after a while, the marriage to Gibbs became another stormy relationship. Mother actually married Gibbs twice and divorced him twice. I think what she really loved was the out of doors and the sagebrush country and a plethora of horses and animals. And pictured here is Elko in a very tough winter in 1947. Actually, Mother lived in a house in Elko from 1965 to 1975. After the divorce in 1975, Mother moved back east and bought a house in Southwick, Mass. We used to take the family to her house for Sunday dinner whenever possible, and Mother's table was always magnificent. Fine linens, flowing blue china, silver candelabra, and always table favors, little gifts for the children. Our children loved it. Shown is Godfrey Baker's 12th birthday party. Mother's health began to slide in the early 1980s. She sold the house in Southwick and moved into a condominium in Simsbury, Connecticut. We saw Mother frequently, and we enjoyed our life together. In 1983, she was diagnosed with cancer and came to live with Karen and me in Avon, Connecticut. Her health failed rapidly. However, at her request, we never hospitalized her. Mother died in late 1984 in our guest room. We had done the best we could. Her cat stayed with us until he died many years later. Mother was buried beside her mother and her father in the Bushway plot in West Barnet, Vermont. Karen's daughter, Kristen, the youngest of all the children, who was still in high school, took care of Mother in her final illness. She sat on the bed and watched out for cigarettes and made Mother tea. Kristen shouldered a burden which I could not because of intensive work and travel. I'm hugely grateful for what Kristen did. Mother's memorial church service was a celebration. We played all of her favorite hymns, with the last one being Onward, Christian Soldiers. And I could feel her energy charging off to a new conquest.